It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them, so thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Bill Dwyer is the president and chief executive officer of Helping Hands Center in Chicago. Bill has over 20 years of experience with children and adult nonprofit organizations and holds a master's degree in counseling with a concentration on marriage and family. He also holds many leadership and management certifications. Bill's best recognized in his field as being forward-thinking with his vision, empowering the people around him to reach their fullest potential, and maintaining the respect and dignity of the people he serves. Bill Dwyer, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you so much, Brant. It's great to be here.
Oh, great to have you here. And after our technical difficulties, it'll be a memory with regards to putting this podcast together. But I'm so glad that we could get together and be our first CEO from a nonprofit.
Thank you.
And very excited about that. And Bill, we kind of like to start with the early years. And maybe you can just tell me a little bit about, where you grew up and, what your early family life was like.
Sure. I was born in South Chicago, and my parents moved quite a bit because they both were more executive kind of people, and they were working on their career. But I spent quite a bit of time in Chicago, and then we moved into. I have a sister and a brother.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't have a brother. I'm nervous. I don't know why I said that.
You wish you had a brother.
I wish I had a brother. Yeah, I wish I had a brother. I have a sister.
Sister is younger or older?
She's 4 years younger.
4 years younger. Okay, so you're the big brother, right?
I'm the big brother, and she lives in Los Angeles right now.
Oh, nice. She's out by me. I'm out in Santa Barbara today, and I know we're recording you in Chicago. Tell me about your parents. Educated, it sounds like professionals, right? What was
Correct.
Their background?
Both of my parents are educated. My father was an executive marketing field,
right.
And my mother was an accountant CFO.
Interesting.
They're both retired now.
Yeah.
They were very disappointed that I went into nonprofit.
Gosh, yeah. Well, that's taking a different path. What kind of an influence did they have on you growing up? Was business a big part of, what you heard at the dinner table, or, encouragement with regards to your career?
Yeah, 100%. Going to college was something that you were just going to do.
Yeah. Was that assumed for both you and your sister?
It was.
Yeah.
My sister's more rebellious than I am, and actually was quite smarter than I was, and she chose not to.
Okay.
And that's why she moved off to LA and pursue
entertainment
acting
career.
And writing and all those kind of things.
Good attracts those types, right?
And cool. But my focus was you're going to get a career.
Interesting. Yeah.
My struggle at school was difficult for me.
Mm-hmm. Were you a good student, Bill, or
no.
average? What was your?
I had dyslexia, and nobody knew what dyslexia was.
Of course, yeah.
When I was younger, going through school, so I was lazy and difficult.
Perceived to be.
That's right.
Yeah,
perceived, exactly.
Right.
And so I worked really hard, and it wasn't until about 8th grade a teacher brought it up to my mother, saying he may have this thing that people are talking about, that's this dyslexia.
Yeah.
And once we got a handle on that, school got a lot easier for me. College was real easy. I read a lot right now. I wouldn't give up being dyslexic for anything in the world.
Well, it's funny you say that. You're probably the second or third CEO, and we've done over 50 of these, that has dyslexia or ADHD.
Oh, wow.
And, there's been some studies about this, and if you haven't seen them, you should look it up. There is really a high proportion of folks that have, been able to achieve that level by overcoming, that we don't want to call it a disability, learning differently, right? Just as we'll talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
But, that's quite an accomplishment. One of my close friends, Paul Orfala, who is the Kinko's chairman, the one that started that, copy machine up, sold it many years ago to FedEx. But, he was always very vocal about the fact that he, couldn't read, was kind of perceived as lazy, had the ADHD. And, it's one of those things that if you do overcome it, you can really achieve great things. And it sounds like you've been on that path.
Yeah. Once you learn how your eyes and mind works, you can work through it.
That's awesome. Any other early influencers in your life other than your mom and dad?
Well, I would say my grandmother was probably
awesome.
My biggest influencer.
Did she live nearby?
She not far.
Yeah.
You had to drive to go see her.
Right.
But I spent, because both my parents worked a lot.
Spent a lot of time there.
She raised me for a lot of time. I would go home late at night.
After school. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And my grandmother was an actuary.
Oh, cool.
And she graduated college.
Wow. That's awesome. Back in the 30s or so, maybe. You got 30s or 40s. Yeah. Fantastic. And let me guess, she was the mother of your mother. Correct?
You got it. Yes.
That strain didn't go too far, right? Apple didn't fall far from the tree. Yeah.
And that's my mother taught me how to be accurate. My father taught me how to be respectful and connecting with people. But my grandmother taught me how to care about people in a very different way, which is unusual for an actuary. But she taught me about different races and different people with abilities and volunteering. And we would together do a lot of those things. And she's with me all the time.
That's awesome. My maternal grandmother had a big influence on me. I was the youngest of three, and so she took care of us a lot, my older brothers. And she was a very avid Christian. She was about 5'0", Dutch immigrant, and she used to live in Bellflower, California, which is probably not a place we would let her live today. But back in the day, she would walk to her church and teach Sunday school, and she'd go by these bars, and people come out drunk, and she'd proselytize to them, and she was absolutely fearless. And gosh, I just really identify with that level of grandmotherly support and love. That's terrific. What about outside of class, Bill? Any sports, music, theater, anything that you pursued that was of interest to you during those elementary, high school, junior high years?
I was involved in sports and always was doing something around the neighborhood that was softball, baseball, football.
Awesome.
When I got into organized sports, I was in soccer for many years.
Oh, okay. That was early on, right? It wasn't as big a sport.
No, it wasn't.
As it is now, yeah.
And I played all through adulthood, actually. When I was about 35 is when I stopped playing and coached quite a bit of soccer.
Cool. Kids? Your own kids or others?
I started with my own kids, then we had a travel team, and all the way up until they were just about high school age.
Yeah. So civic mindedness has been a part of your career. Did that start early on? Were there things that, grandma had encouraged you to do based on her social consciousness? Did you volunteer and get involved in things, or did that kind of come later in your life?
I don't think I formally volunteered after being with my grandmother. My wife calls me the Boy Scout. Because
were you one?
I actually was.
Good.
almost made Eagle Scout.
Almost made Eagle. Okay.
I was one short.
I did too, almost.
I was one short of Eagle. And that was a great time too.
Yeah, but I bet. You must have been involved for a few years then. Yeah.
But it's always helping people. I love people. And I when I see someone need something, I'm there.
Awesome.
So that's why my wife goes, please stay here. Where are you going? And I said, I think they need something. So I always think about that.
What about jobs, volunteers? What type of things kept you busy? And again, we're still kind of in your high school years, or even early college. Were there things that you worked at? Were you expected to work to pay for school?
Yeah, if I wasn't in sport, work was important, and I liked it. I liked working.
What kind of work did you do? What were some of the jobs over the summers, or while you were in school?
When I was going through high school, I had 2 jobs because I really wanted a car, and I wanted to go to prom, and I wanted to do all those things.
Sure.
And so I worked at Toys R Us. I did that for a while, but
cool.
My favorite job was a company called Handy Andy, which was like a Menards back in the day.
Okay, sure.
And what I moved up real quickly. I was about 17 years old, and I was the department head of the lumber department. Everywhere I've ever went in my job, I got promoted quickly.
That's great.
Leadership or management was something I always wanted to do. I did start a few jobs. I built decks and did some landscaping on my own, where I would just go out and solicit it. And because of Handy Andy, I learned a lot of how to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was some good skill base there, right? Skill-based training. Yeah.
And then awesome. I just went out and did that.
Have you always kind of had that talent, the ability to fix things and build things? Has that been a love of yours?
I would say, I would say so. Again, watching people grow and improve, that's what I see management as, is this: how do I get all the obstacles out of your way so you can be the best person you can be?
Awesome.
And that's what I think management is a lot of times. And I learned that when I was younger. And one of the funnier jobs that I had was, I don't know if you heard Olin Mills. Olin Mills is a photography company.
Yeah, right. I remember them. Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day, everybody would take a picture of their family. Did your
portraits, right? Yeah, right. Sure.
And so I was a senior in high school, and I applied for a position at this company, and I actually made it to manager right away. And so I was leading a team of about 15 or 20, making more money than I ever could imagine.
Good for you.
And what I learned there was I don't need all this money, so I gave it back to my staff in bonuses, and they worked harder, and then we got more bonuses, and we did quite well.
Nice.
For a long time there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned earlier that it was kind of a foregone conclusion that both you and your sister would go to school. Sister rebelled, you went on ahead. What made you choose where you went to school, and kind of the decision on picking a major? What was involved in that?
First was I had to pay for most of it. My parents could afford it, and it was part of them teaching. They did help in the long run, but there was a lesson of teaching me that I should care about my own education.
The value of it, yeah.
And so it was close because I had to keep working. I worked full-time through college and grad school. And my first major that I chose was accounting. And
mom's influence.
Correct. It's not the best degree to go into when you're dyslexic.
Right. And did you know by that time that you did have dyslexia? Was it identified? Okay.
Yeah. Probably about senior year. I'm sorry, 8th grade to freshman year is when it really was diagnosed and started getting help. But after my first semester of accounting, I realized this is not going to work.
Wasn't for you, yeah.
And it also didn't make me happy or satisfied. And I took a psychology course, and I did very well at it. And so then I thought, I'm going to keep doing this. And that's how things went.
That kind of developed your interest. Awesome. And any areas of work during your college years that was in that field? In other words, did you either volunteer or get involved in any thing where you were applying that degree, or did that come later?
That came later. My drive was, if I'm going to be into psychology, I'm going to have my a private practice when I graduate.
Got it.
And I needed money. And so I needed to make more money than if I was working some of the lower level jobs. So I did business while I was going to college. That's the kind of stuff, sales and... Oh,
so you got your degree in business, but then took psychology classes?
No, my degree is in psychology, but I worked business.
Oh, you worked business. Got it. Understood. Yeah. And what was that first job that you took that was within your profession or your degree achieved out of college?
It was helping people that are severe mental health issues,
Oh, cool.
bipolar, schizophrenia, and it
Yeah.
was all adults.
Yeah.
And I would call it a public practice. We had contracts with different hospitals and different organizations that would send their clients to us, and we would help them process through.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. And was it with an established a nonprofit or a service center, a hospital? What was
It
the
was called
affiliation?
Lutheran Family Services,
Okay, got it.
and that
Yeah.
was somewhat of a mental health agency.
And you came in as someone that was doing the work directly, obviously, with the people that were in that. Had that
I had
need.
an internship there,
Ah, cool.
and then they hired me while I was still doing my internship,
Nice.
and then they kept
Nice.
me on after that.
And did you move into any leadership responsibilities there, or did that come later in your career?
That came later. I really, in
Okay.
the beginning, was focusing on being the best therapist I can
Yeah.
and how to
awesome.
get a private practice.
Right. Right.
When I
And how
got
long
the
did it-
private,
Yes. Say, how long did it take you to get there?
you get lucky sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't say that I worked hard to get a private practice because I knew a few people and they helped me. And probably within about a year and a half, at a very young age, I was in private practice.
That's awesome.
And the key, though, is it is a business and you are your only commodity. And trying to figure out, how do I grow a private practice? Now, nobody told me how to do this. I thought you work 40 hours a week, so you see 40 clients a week. And that's not really the case, even though I did that for almost 2 years, back to back, seeing that many clients. I focused on marriage and family.
Yeah, that was you started an MFT, as I recall,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
And so I focused on marriage and family. And what I found as my niche was working with lesbian and gay couples. Because, again, back then, that was not something
it wasn't even legal
did.
at that time, right? I
Right.
mean,
Correct.
Were you
Nobody
in
talked
Illinois
about it.
then, or Michigan?
I was in Illinois, and it was not legal. It was legal to do the therapy, but it wasn't
Sure.
legal to be married. And once the word got out that I was doing this, my practice was full.
Wow.
And as we know now, the secret is people that are gay or not gay have the same marriage problems.
Of course.
So
yeah.
I didn't need to think or study any differently to help them work through whatever they were doing.
Cool. That's great. That's great. And how long did you run your own practice?
Probably about 3.5 years.
Yeah.
I tapered it off. At some point, the Christmas parties were quite boring. They were just me. And I really had this craving to be around a system.
Other people.
More.
Yeah.
Other workers. And so I took a pay cut, 2/3 pay cut, and went back into nonprofit to be a therapist in a nonprofit helping at-risk kids, gang members and drug dealers and things like that. And I'll tell you, the funny story is that when I sat down with my first client, I'm making real good money and people really want to see me, to meeting this gang member who I then got all cocky on him in the sense of, you're lucky to even talk to me. And he cussed me out.
Oh my gosh.
And told me, get out of my face, you're nobody. And I was bit. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
So instead of turning you off, it motivated you.
It motivated me. I
Wow.
said, I can help these kids, and it's not going to be easy,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have to prove myself, and I really enjoyed doing that.
Good for you. Good for you. Awesome. And in that experience, did you start managing people, or did that come a little later in your career?
It did. I started managing interns.
Okay. Tell me about the first time that started happening then. Was that a year or two into that role, or right away?
A little less than a year.
Yeah, cool.
I showed interest right away. I wanted to get involved more in how does the company work. And so then I was put in positions to start supervising and learning more. So I ran their internship program.
Nice.
Made a lot of mistakes.
Of course.
What I learned is what being a therapist is all about. I should have learned for management is listen. Instead, I was trying to teach or tell people, this is how you do it, this is how you do it. And I didn't really take the time to listen to my staff and what they really needed.
Yeah.
And so that was my journey in that first piece, is listening to those interns of what they want out of this experience.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the other lessons from your early management experience, either with interns or then when you went on to manage other therapists?
Well, I would say that one that comes to mind is the higher up that I moved in an organization, the more you have to be careful of what you say and how you say it.
Yeah, so true.
I wanted to be their friend, and I wanted to be liked. And when you're equal with somebody, you're the life of the party and everyone enjoys your company. And as soon as you become the boss and make the same joke, they're not so happy.
You don't get invited to lunch anymore.
No, you are not. One of the stories I have there is that I was walking through a campus. I was a director of clinical services at the time, and it was raining outside, and there's 5 or 6 buildings along the way to get to the building I wanted to go to. And so I just was trying to avoid the rain. So I walked in a building and out a building and in a building. By the time I got to where I was going, I got a couple calls from staff saying, "What's wrong? Why are you checking all of these places? You looked upset." And I said, "I just wanted to get to the other side. I was not thinking about anything." And you start realizing that people are watching you.
Yeah, right. Wow.
It doesn't matter what you think of your authority. It's how others think of your
how
authority.
Others see you. Yeah, they see you chagrined and bitter. They think it's about them.
Yes, they do.
Interesting. You've had bosses over the years, obviously, prior to ascending to your executive director, CEO at Helping Hand. What are some of the best or worst lessons, Bill, that you've learned from previous bosses? And don't feel you have to mention any names.
All right, good. I appreciate that. I've had some good bosses that taught me about people. And people are not numbers. They're living people with lives. And I think as I grew in my career, keeping that in mind when I'm looking at budgets and deciding how to save money, really take the time to think about that person and that position of what quality they bring to the organization. Confidence. It's good to listen to other people, but you have to be anchored. You have to know who you are and what you stand for, because there's a lot of people trying to sway or influence to their agenda.
Their advantage.
Yeah, their advantage. And when I follow all those leads, you become wishy-washy and you don't stand for anything. And if you think, I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to be respected and make good decisions so they all have jobs for many years, it helps make those decisions easier. So I had a great CEO at one point, and I came to her and I just got promoted to vice president, and from being a senior director. And she said to me, I'm complaining about what I can't get done or won't be able to accomplish this thing. And she said, I could make you a director again if you want to, or you could start acting like a vice president.
Whoa.
And as you quickly
you
already know
remember
about
those
me,
conversations. Yeah.
That's a good challenge for me.
Yeah, right.
Those don't scare me away. And as her and I's relationship grew and she became more of a mentor of mine, what she meant by it was you have to change.
Yeah, that's right.
What got you to be a director is not going to get you to stay being a vice president.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And as I moved to being a CEO, I learned that very much.
Well, I think I know the answer to the first part of this question, but maybe you can illuminate on the second.
Right.
It sounds like your leadership style has changed over time. How would you kind of say it has? Taking that experience of director to VP to CEO, what have been those fine tuning or perhaps major shifts or major pivots in your leadership style?
Understanding that just because I know doesn't mean everybody else does, and it's okay to let them learn and come to the same conclusion rather than telling them. I don't have to be the guy that fixes it and knows everything. Being the person to allow other people to express themselves and let the ideas percolate is much more powerful than being the smart guy in the room.
Yeah, so true.
And patience.
Hmm.
I have a rock on my desk that says patience,
Hmm.
and I am reminded of let things happen. Stop trying to force things to happen. You'll get more out of it. And people are the most important part of my career. I'm a CEO because of the people that were around me, and I'm going to stay that, and I'm going to be the best CEO because of the people around me. They have the answers. They have the great ideas. And to me, that's just keeping that in my mind is when I don't know what to do, I go talk to people
Hmm.
and listen.
Awesome. Awesome. Bill, tell us a little bit about Helping Hand in Chicago, how you got there and what's the mission of the organization?
Yeah, Helping Hand's been around for about 60 years,
Wow.
and we help adults and children with intellectual disabilities. We started off as a school,
Hmm.
and 60 years ago, again, that's cutting edge
Yeah.
of a bunch of families coming together to say we want better for our children. We have grown from this little school to almost about 300 staff, and we have homes. So we have
Hmm.
homes where adults with disabilities live, about 12 of those.
Hmm.
We have what we call a day program that teaches people art and music and computers and how to get jobs.
They
And
kind of come to the facility and
they
learn
come
those
to our
things.
facility.
Yeah,
There's
awesome.
about 250 that do that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's I call it Willy Wonka land because you walk in there and you know that moment when you're in there with all the candy, that's what that place looks like. It's just amazing seeing these people alive with energy,
That's so
learning
cool.
and socializing. It's just a beautiful place.
And many of them probably never had that opportunity, right? Because they grew up in more structured educational environments where they maybe didn't have that type of
You're exactly right.
opportunity. Yeah.
That it's not the 1800s that we weren't doing what we could do for people with intellectual disabilities.
Sure.
It was really the 90s was the last time that they got rid of the dysfunctional institution.
Mm.
So it wasn't that long ago. And so my excitement is there's so much room to still grow because it's still a very young field.
That's great. Cool. I mentioned early on that you're the first nonprofit CEO we've had on the show, and it's just wonderful to talk about this because I think the work you're doing is so fantastic. And, in our planning call, I'd mentioned that I have a daughter that one of my daughters is working with,
Yes.
as she corrects me all the time, people that learn differently, right?
Right.
And she does that overseas and just loves it. And, she'd been babysitting since she was single digits and has always enjoyed working with children with those types of disabilities, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, et cetera. How were you kind of attracted to this opportunity? Were you recruited into it? Was it something you set the sights on? How does one kind of get to become a CEO of a nonprofit of your size?
Some of it is luck, right?
That's true in either the public or the private sector.
Right. What I tell my staff is, again, the smartest and greatest person doesn't always make it to CEO. That it's opportunity, it's being at the right place, and definitely knowing who you are and what you want to do. And majority of my career was working with kids and at-risk kids and nonprofits.
Right.
And I then got a call from an organization that I used to work with, and they said, can you come over and create a program that nobody has ever seen before, change our culture, and give our clients a raise or our staff a raise? And this is moving where I live now is Indiana. And so it was moving from Indiana and working in Indiana to coming to Illinois again, returning back in some sense in a field that I don't know. And so I was nervous about it, but there was an opportunity to learn from the CEO. He was an excellent marketing person. And that every job I took prior to becoming a CEO was to teach me how to become a CEO. So I chose certain organizations that were really good at things so I can learn that and then take it to a place once it's my time. So they got me into their organization, and the quick story there was I walked into the room of 200 people, adults with disabilities, and I was scared to death. My legs were shaking. I never was afraid working with gang members. Not once did I ever get afraid, even when the punches were being thrown. But walking with adults with disability, it got me. They look different. They sound different. They smell different. Everything about them. And they want so much to know me, and they get in your space. And so I went home that night, and I drove about 45 minutes home because it's a little farther drive. And got home, and my wife said, "I've never seen your face like that. What is wrong?"
Ashen white.
Yes, it really was. It really was. I said, I made a terrible mistake in my career.
Goodness. This is after the first day.
It's after the first day.
Bill.
And my whole career is to keep growing, right? And I said, I made a bad call here. And so what's wrong? And I said, I don't know what to do with these individuals. I don't know how to help them. And she said to me, "Are they people?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Then you'll do just fine."
Oh, gosh, great.
And I went back the next day. I moved my office from the corporate office, and I put it in the main program area. It was a closet, about 4x4 with a pipe running through it, no windows because there was no other space. And everybody who would come see the vice president over there would say, "They obviously don't like you." But if I was going to help or change or create, I had to be around the people that I was serving. And so that was very important.
Do you think part of your fear might have been around the fact that you grew up with dyslexia?
That's interesting. That's an interesting.
I wonder if there was
somebody said that.
Something subtle.
You should be a therapist.
Unconscious there. Well, I feel like I am sometimes in the work that I do with recruiters. I've got to look inside the head of my CEOs and understand what they really want, because usually what they say the first time isn't really what it is.
What I think of myself is I always want to help people.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just be in a title and get paid.
So, Bill, private company CEOs talk a lot about company culture. Many of those cultures are founded by the folks that start those companies up. Others are, inherited, but, the CEOs seem to think they have an impact. What's it like in the nonprofit sector and where you are today? Do you have that kind of an impact? Do you perceive that you do?
Culture is very important. And that's partly why I was pulled out of Indiana to go to Illinois. Was the CEO that met me saw the culture the change in culture that I created in other organizations. I think it's the driving force. If you have a culture, especially when you're in a service field, because it's all about people. 80% of my budget is staff.
Sure.
And if the culture's not set appropriately, then you're not providing the best service.
Yeah.
And coming in to a nonprofit, people join a nonprofit and a service nonprofit because they want to make a difference.
Right.
And the other piece is that we're always struggling, right? The nonprofits are always trying to get money to make ends meet because, state doesn't match everything and things like that.
Sure.
So money is on the mind of executives very much in nonprofits. And that doesn't match with the staff that do the job because they're doing it because they're good people.
For love for people, yeah.
For love for people.
Yeah.
And so when management starts talking about saving money, they hear you're taking away, and who's going to do this service if you don't do it? And so making sure the culture is balanced to be able to, people say, what's more important, money or mission? Yeah. And it's both. You can't do it without one or the other, and it's a balance of getting everyone to understand that.
What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in that you hire and bring into your organization?
Heart and passion.
Yeah.
I know I can teach somebody something and they can learn, but I can't teach the passion, the drive to want to make this a better place, a better world.
That's right.
To be creative. I've listened to your podcast, and we don't want to hear the phrase, "That's the way we've always done it."
Yes, that's right.
And
that's right.
Nonprofits do get stuck in that because they think that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't accept it. And everywhere I've ever worked in nonprofit, that becomes a pet peeve, and people around me know that they're not going to say that.
Right.
How do we do this better? How do we improve the services? How do we think completely different? What I've seen before in nonprofits is they try to make the best VCR they could ever make, not realizing it's time to move on to something else.
Yeah, time to move on to Netflix.
Netflix, right. And that's what nonprofits have to get out of it. It doesn't mean you keep improving what you have. Sometimes you got to step completely in a different direction.
Yeah. Fantastic. Bill Dwyer, CEO of Helping Hands Chicago, you've been terrific with your time. This has been so educational. I would love to hear about your background. We always like to end the podcast, though, with one last question, and particularly for those in our audience, and I'm sure there are many that maybe are considering a career in nonprofit work and perhaps want to be an ED or a CEO like yourself someday. What kind of career and life advice would you give to someone who's got their eyes on, the corner office of a nonprofit down the road?
You make sure your priorities are straight.
Yeah.
It's not an easy job. It's a lifestyle. You don't work for an organization anymore. You are the organization. And that's hard to do. And I've made sacrifices in other parts of my life because this is important. And my family was behind me to do that. And so don't rush to the top without enjoying every moment that you're going through. One of the things I've heard many of my mentees and things say is, I'm tired of middle management. I want to get into upper management. CEO is, in a nonprofit, is the ultimate middle manager. I have a board that I have to talk to, and I have staff. Yeah. Middle management is important. Make sure you ace how to be a good middle manager, and you'll be a really good CEO.
Fantastic. Bill, once again, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you very much, Brent.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.